Welcome, brave souls, to Dark Code, where the darkest tales are brought to life. Tonight, we invite you to step into the heart of an ancient mystery, a place where whispers echo through crumbling halls and shadows breathe with a life of their own. In this chilling episode, Whispers of Blackthorn Manor, we follow Emma, a fearless journalist, as she ventures into the haunted depths of a forsaken mansion known for its sinister past. But what she finds in Blackthorn Manor goes beyond the realm of the supernatural. This is a story where love, fear, and darkness intertwine in a terrifying battle for the soul. So, settle in, turn off the lights, and prepare yourself for a journey that will leave you questioning what's real and what is part of the darkness itself. The storm raged outside Blackthorn Manor, its violent winds howling through the trees and crashing against the mansion's ancient windows. Emma's car slid to a stop on the gravel driveway, its tires struggling to find grip on the slick surface. She stared at the imposing figure of the manor before her, an eerie silhouette against the darkened sky. The towering structure was veiled in an aura of mystery and long-forgotten tales, each one more chilling than the last. She had heard the stories. Blackthorn Manor had been abandoned for decades, the last of its owners having mysteriously disappeared. Some said it was haunted, cursed by an ancient force that thrived on its dark past. But Emma wasn't afraid. She was a journalist, after all, always seeking the truth. And Blackthorn Manor was the perfect place to write her next big piece. As she made her way up the stone steps, the air grew unnaturally cold. The old iron door creaked open of its own accord, and Emma stepped into the foyer. The scent of musty wood and old dust filled the air, and the floorboards groaned beneath her weight as if the house itself were sighing in welcome, or warning. The portraits on the walls stared down at her, their painted eyes lifeless but unnervingly attentive. She brushed it off, clutching her notebook tightly as she ventured deeper into the manor. The manor felt different from any place she'd ever been, alive, almost as if it had a heartbeat of its own. The hallway stretched endlessly, lined with more paintings, each one older than the last. But it wasn't just the age of the house that unsettled her, it was the feeling that someone, was watching her. The shadows seemed to deepen in the corners of the rooms, growing more oppressive with every step she took. And then, she heard it. A soft voice, faint yet undeniably clear, as if it were coming from somewhere close. Emma. Her heart skipped a beat. She froze. There was no one in sight. She peered down the hallway, but all she saw was darkness and silence. The voice had been unmistakable, as if it had called her name directly, pulling her in. "Who's there?" she called out, her voice trembling slightly. But no reply came, just the sound of the wind howling from the outside and the unsettling creak of the house settling. Emma shook her head, trying to convince herself that it was just her imagination, too much time spent in dark places playing tricks on her mind. But something deep inside her told her otherwise. The house was alive, and it knew her name. She wandered deeper into the manor, her flashlight beam cutting through the growing darkness. The air felt thick, almost oppressive, as if the walls were closing in around her. She stepped into a large, grand room, what appeared to be a drawing room, its walls lined with shelves of old books. A fireplace sat cold and unused, the hearth long since abandoned. As her light swept across the room, she saw something that made her freeze. There, standing by the far corner, was a figure. Tall, shadowed, his features obscured by the dimness. He was facing the wall, but Emma could see enough to know that he was real, alive, and somehow, familiar. "Hello," she called, her voice tentative, almost afraid to disturb the silence. The figure didn't respond. Instead, he slowly turned toward her, his face emerging from the shadows, revealing a sharp jawline, dark hair, and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see straight through her. "I've been waiting for you," he said in a low, haunting voice, his gaze never leaving hers. Emma's breath caught in her throat. "Waiting for me," she repeated, her pulse quickening. "Who are you?" "My name is Julian," he replied, his lips curling into a faint, enigmatic smile. "I've been waiting here for a long time, for someone like you." Emma felt a strange pull in her chest, a magnetic force drawing her toward him. She didn't know why, but there was something deeply familiar about him. Something in his eyes, in his voice, that unsettled her in the most intimate way. Why have you been waiting for me?" she asked, taking a hesitant step closer. Julian's smile deepened, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Because you were meant to find this place," he said softly. You're the one who can finally free me." The words didn't make sense, and yet Emma felt a surge of curiosity. She wasn't afraid. Not yet. There was something comforting about him, as though they shared a connection that she couldn't quite explain. "I don't understand," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Julian stepped forward, his presence filling the space. "This house," he began, his voice growing colder, "it has a mind of its own. It draws people in, keeps them here. It feeds off their fear, their loneliness. But it also seeks something deeper. Something darker." Emma felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" she asked, her heart racing as his words took on a sinister tone. "I'm not just a resident of this house," Julian said. "I am the house. I was bound to it. Trapped here, trapped in its darkness. And you, Emma, you're the key." Before she could respond, the floor beneath them shuddered, and the house seemed to groan in protest. The walls trembled, and the once subtle whispers in the air grew louder, a cacophony of voices that filled her ears. The shadows in the room seemed to grow thicker, swirling, as if they were alive. They reached out, brushing against her skin, making her skin crawl. "Julian," Emma said, her voice barely audible, "what's happening? What is this place?" "This is where it all ends, Emma," he whispered, his voice now tinged with desperation. "This house was built to keep me here, to trap me in its endless hunger. But it's not just me, it's you now. It will feed on us, on our desires. It doesn't care if we're alive or dead." She tried to back away, but the shadows closed in around her, pulling her closer. Julian grabbed her wrist, his grip unyielding. "You can't escape, Emma. No one can. The house will never let you go," he said, his voice soft, almost regretful. "But there is a way, there's always a way." Suddenly, the room grew even darker. The shadows closed in on them both, coiling around their bodies like a suffocating blanket. Emma felt herself being drawn into the very walls, her feet no longer able to move as the floor beneath her became a shifting mass of darkness. Julian leaned close, his lips brushing against her ear as he whispered, "The house demands one thing from us, our souls. But in return, it will give us what we desire most." Emma's breath caught in her throat as she understood. The house wasn't just feeding on fear, it was feeding on their deepest, most hidden desires, binding them together in a dark, forbidden bond. She could feel her pulse pounding in her veins, her body reacting to the overwhelming presence of the house and the strange connection she had with Julian. "I don't want this," she whispered, though her body betrayed her words. The house's pull was undeniable. "You don't have a choice," Julian murmured, his lips brushing against hers once again, his touch searing her skin. "We are bound to this place. And now, so are you." As their lips met in a fierce, desperate kiss, Emma's mind raced, torn between the primal desire that gripped her and the horror of the situation. The house was alive, and it was feeding on them, consuming them, binding their fates together. The walls seemed to close in tighter, the darkness swallowing them whole. And Emma understood, with terrifying clarity, this was just the beginning. The house had claimed her. And now, it would never let her go. The manor stood silent once more, the storm outside subsiding into a quiet whisper. But inside, the house pulsed with a new, insatiable hunger, waiting for the next soul to come and join its endless, eternal cycle. Thank you for joining us for Dark Code, Whispers of Blackthorn Manor. We hope this journey into the haunted past of Blackthorn Manor has left you with a sense of unease and curiosity, wondering just how deep the darkness truly goes. Remember, in a world full of shadows and secrets, sometimes the scariest things are not the ones we see, but the ones we feel. Emma's story, like many before her, has become a part of Blackthorn Manor's endless curse, and its whispers will continue to haunt the land, waiting for the next soul to cross its threshold. Until next time, stay safe, and remember, some places are better left unexplored.